Chairman George Garcia, thank you for making time. I know in the run-up to the next barangay Sangguniang Kapitan elections, you must be so busy now. You're into the last 30 days. Pero we really appreciate your time to brief us on how the preparations are
Yes,
coming
sir.
along.
Napaka-importante, sir, yung mga ganitong klaseng mga discussions kasi alam mo, very important that the Comelec is able to explain to our people, to educate them and inform them of the developments at saka yung mga restrictions, limitations, especially sa mga candidates.
Yeah. Well, sir, siguro just to start things off, kamusta ba? How are things coming along? Smooth po ba? Meron po ba kayo mga concerns na binabantayan? And I think the election period has already started po, no? So, ano po bang dapat malaman ng mga tao?
Sir Kling, kung napansin po nyo yung filing ng certificates of candidacy, and that's with all the modesty and the due respect to everyone, naging napakaayos po ng filing natin. Napakaganda po ng ating filing of candidacy. Naging very peaceful. Maaari pong, nung unang araw, talagang blockbuster. Sobrang dami po na nag-file ng candidacy and it resulted to a 1.414 million number of candidates during the last day ng filing natin ng candidacy. So naging napakaayos po. And then after that, sinabi namin, bawal pang mag-campaign. Mayroon tayong prohibition sa premature campaigning because our interpretation is that premature campaigning is there in a manual election because manual po election natin ng barangay SK. But pag automated, walang premature campaigning. So sabi natin may premature campaigning and we will disqualify candidates who will prematurely campaign in all forms of media, whether in social media or in regular media na meron tayo. At sinabi rin natin na whether direct or indirect campaigning, that's prohibited. So ngayon po, kung napapansin po ng mga kababayan natin nationwide, wala po nagkalat ng mga tarpaulin, mga campaign materials.
Parang hindi wala na may election na darating.
Parang walang election. At natutuwa po ako dahil at least compliant sila. Kaya lang, Sir Click, meron pa rin mga ilang pasaway. Ilan po yan, napakalit na porsyento. Ilang pasaway and yung mga na-showcause namin, almost kulang-kulang 3,000 na yung na-showcause natin. And then, kanina lamang, nationwide. At kanina lamang nag-file ang aming task force on premature campaigning ng petitions to disqualify. 35 candidates kanina. And then by next week, sabi nila magpapile pa sila araw-araw pa rin. Because we wanted to prove to one and all, especially to the candidates, that the Comelec is serious. Kung before nakakaligtas sila, magaan, maayos lang, maluwag ang Comelec, ay ibahin niyo po yung present leadership ng Comelec. We will impose and implement the law at all costs.
So I saw a recording of your press release. I think a couple of weeks ago, you were saying that you were receiving some complaints, pero there were some instances na hindi pala kandidato yung kino-complain or something. So how bogged down are you with those? I know you said 3,000. It's also only small, but Comelec's resources is also, I think, focused on having a smooth election, right? So how's the staff? How's the preparation? Kamusta naman po yung mga iba pang concerns?
Of course, understaffed lagi ang Comelec. Hindi rin ganun kadami yung resources namin because remember, Sir Clint,
they didn't give you the budget you're asking for.
Remember, Sir Clint, na yung as we discussed before, na-postpone kasi at na-reset ang barangay and SK election. We were given only 8.441 billion pesos and we were requesting Congress, baka pwede kami mabigyan kahit na 3.5 up to 4 billion pesos. But although we were given by the executive additional 2.59 billion, but of course, that's not enough. But what we did, Sir Clint, was that, number one, tinaasan namin yung honorarium ng teachers. Supposedly, ang matatanggap ng isang teacher ay pagka-chairman, 6,000 lang, at pagka-member, 5,000. We have 3 electoral board members per precinct. And so what we did was that based on our savings at saka yung mga natipid namin, Sir Clint, sa ating procurement, ginawa po namin 10,000 and 9,000 because it's too unfair sa mga teachers natin if ang babayaran pa rin nila ay ang ibibigay natin sa kanila ay 6,000 at 5,000.
And with inflation,
so whether kasi po there should be no distinction between those who are serving in an automated election and those who are serving in a manual election. Dapat parehas lang. In fact po, Sir Clint,
mas matrabaho
ang manual election. So tama lang po na ibigay namin yun. And then, of course, nagtitrain na kami ng mga teachers natin ngayon. Nagkaroon na rin tayo ng command conference sa ating AFP at saka sa PNP. And of course, the Comelec has several projects for this BSKE because we wanted to set a standard. And so that by 2025 onwards, dapat ganun na. Kung kaya naman pala ng 2023 Barangay SK, sana sa mga susunod, kakayanin na rin natin or mas maganda pa.
Right. I remember when you were testifying in the Senate, you were saying that you had to anticipate more voters kasi when you delay it, of course, there will be more Filipinos coming of age. Um, has your calculations been on point, or how far are you from estimating the additional number of voters that you have to, of course, serve now?
Yes, Sir Clink, we started the registration. We resumed the registration for purposes of the Barangay and SK election, which was postponed
Right.
from December 9 to January 30, 2023. Maiksi lang po, ginawa namin maiksi lang kasi
Right.
alam namin na-anticipate natin baka mas lalong lumaki. And
Right.
it resulted to a 1.4 million additional voters.
1.4.
Well, as
Wow.
correctly predicted, sabi ko
Right.
noon, it will be around 1.4 to 1.5 million.
Yeah.
It resulted to a 1.4 million additional voters. And of course, it created an increase in the number of precincts and of course the number of ballot boxes that we are supposed to use, the number of ballots. We have to print additional 1.4 million ballots. And at the same time, yung mga indelible inks, dadagdagan mo rin, ballpen, dadagdagan mo rin, and of course, yung additional cost.
But as you were saying, you made do with it. Parang kumaga, nahigpit na ba kayo ng sinturon, or was something compromised to make you ready, or how did you go about it?
Yung pong sa presinto, instead of increasing too much the number of precincts, nag-cluster na lang kami ng mga presinto.
Okay. Para makatipid na, no?
Of course, it will result to an increase in the number of voters per precinct, but ganun po talaga, yun po yung effect, yung sinasabi natin.
Yeah.
Kapag ka natipid, gagawa ng paraan ng Comelec and it will result to a decrease. Supposedly dapat increase but a decrease in the number of precincts because we are going to recluster precincts. And at the same time, doon po kami nakatipid ng malaki sa mga procurement namin. Siyempre po, that's the best thing in procurement because it's open and public, then pababaan sila ng presyo, so long as they are compliant with our terms of reference. So, na-award namin doon sa pinakamababa yung presyo, nakakaroon po kami ng mga savings.
Right. So, the clustering po was done nationwide or selective lang po ginawa?
Nationwide po yun.
Okay.
And presently, we have 202,000 precincts. Dapat po, circling, base sa estimate natin, dapat sana mga 228,000 pa yun eh.
So, the 20,000 something less.
Yes, so
fewer.
nireduce na namin. Kasi po, when you increase also the number of precincts, you increase the number of electoral board members. And for your information, presently, we have about 836,000
Right.
teachers that will be serving for the election of October 30. And do you know that for purposes lang po ng information and dissemination sa mga kababayan natin, Sir Clean, sa budgeting, almost 65% po ng budget ng Comelec sa isang election na pupunta po sa ating honoraria para sa ating mga teachers.
Workers. Yeah.
Yes po. So, more or less, that will be about 7 billion. Of the 8.449 and then yung additional 2.59, mga 7 billion na po yung ating honoraria for the teachers.
So, you were saying that there was an additional 1.4 something votes. So, total, how many are eligible and how many are you expecting? Normally, the turnout is higher, di ba po, pag barangay?
Yes.
Or compared to the national elections? Or?
Yung election natin ng 2022, Sir Clink, it resulted to an 83% voters turnout, the highest in the history of our country's election, 83%. And based on historical data, as far as voting for barangay and SK is concerned, almost po mga 70%.
So lower.
Mataas pa rin po yung 70% na voters turnout simply because maybe nga barangay, kakilala nila, kaibigan, so they are going to the precincts and voting. So 70%, and we are expecting more or less mga 70% din po na voters turnout.
Lower but still a lot.
Yes, because we have to understand that the election will be by October 30 and the next day,
Alam
it's All Saints Day. And therefore, people will be flocking into their provinces and maybe after voting, then magpapahinga and then enjoy the holidays by that time.
Right. For the voter, will there be any significant changes because of the clustering? Masahaba po ba yung pila? And because it's not as few as when you have the diba, the national elections.
Pag national elections, Sir Clint, nung nakaraan 2022 elections, we had then 107,000 precincts. The reason is because, of course, one precinct was equivalent to almost 600 to 800 voters.
Wow. Okay.
Kasi nga po, mahal yung machine.
Yeah.
So ngayon po, since manual naman ito, wala naman tayong machines.
Yeah.
So kahit magawin namin from 200 dati, kinlaster namin, ginawa namin 400, kahit mga 600 pa, we honestly believe makakatapos naman tayo ng voting. So again, for the information of everyone, the voting will be from 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock only because it's manual election.
Right. And then we were talking a while ago, Comelec has some interesting innovations that you're trying out. Can you talk about those pilot experiments?
Yes, sir. Sir Klink, for this election of October 30, Barangay and SK, the Comelec would like to pilot test the so-called mall voting.
Mall
Alam niyo
voting,
po,
okay.
Talagang nagulat kami sa reception ng ating mga kababayan.
Okay.
So, there will be 10 malls participating and at no expense, Sir Klink, sa commission ng election. Wala po tayong babayaran, personnel ng malls, pati po facilities ng malls, libre po yung bibigay sa atin. Talagang part lang po ng corporate social responsibility ng mga malls. So, talagang magpapilot po tayo ng 10 dito po sa Metro Manila and of course in Legazpi and in Cebu. And we're hoping that the voter experience will be different this time. Especially if you'll be going to a mall, air-conditioned, pwede kang mamasyal yung family pagkatapos bumoto o bago bumoto. And at the same time, wala masyadong vote buying doon kasi babantayan namin yung lahat ng dadaanan ng mga botante. At pinaka-importante po sa mall voting ay yung mga senior citizens natin, PWDs, heavily pregnant women, will be properly taken care of kasi may mga facilities po, katulad halimbawa ng wheelchair. Yung may mga security guards, mga staff ng malls, and of course, may staff din naman ng Comelec na mag-a-accompany po sa kanila sa pagboto. So, while they're voting, medyo malamig-lamig ang kanilang paligid, and habang naghihintay, for example, here in Manila, nilagay po sila doon sa mall, nilagay sila sa isang sinihan habang naghihintay sila. Comfortably, pwedeng matulog pa habang, but then later on tatawagin. So yun po ang gusto natin because if in case we'll be able to will become successful by this barangay and SK election, nationwide na po gawin na natin yung mall voting. We have almost 400 malls nationwide. O di mas conveniente po. And hindi po namin pino-force ang mga voters. Yung mga presinto na nasa tabi ng malls, kino-consult muna namin sila before we transfer their registration, their voting. Number one. Number two po, we have what we call as early voting. Hours. Take note, hours po.
Para so same day but earlier start.
Yes, sir. Same, kasi po, we have been pushing for early voting law. Sana at least 1 week man lang before the election, katulad ng media, AFP, PNP, teachers. Kaya lang, hindi pa po napapasa. So, the Comelec has to innovate. So, naisip natin early voting hours. 5 to 7 po dito sa Muntinlupa at saka sa Naga City. Then this senior citizens, sila naman po yung maagang gumising. Yung mga heavily pregnant women, yung mga PWDs, pwede silang bumoto ng 5 to 7. Exclusive po sa kanila yon. Of course, yung mga ibang ayaw bumoto ng 5 to 7, pwede naman silang humalo sa kadamihan. Ang kagandahan po doon, Sir Klink, hindi sila hahaba yung pila, may istorbo, masasagi, masasaktan sa pagboto. At least po exclusive at medyo malamig-lamig din po yung 5 to 7 o'clock.
Hindi po maaraw.
Yes, sir. And then the third project that we are going to have by the BSK of 2023 is yung pong automated BSKE. Talaga pong ambisyon ng Comelec na i-automate na natin ang dapat lahat ng election natin. Alam niyo po, kaya nagkakaroon ng massive violence, failure of election before is because habang tumatagal ang pagbilang ng mga balota o yung pagpoproclaim ng kandidato, nakakagawa yung mga losing candidates ng pamamaraan and the supporters. Samantalang in 15 minutes, alam mo yung results. Paano mo pa madadaya yun? Paano ka pa makakapag-protesta or whatever? And experience po natin yan itong 2022. It's a matter of 1 hour, alam mo kung sinong mayor mo. In a matter of 2 hours, alam mo kung sinong governor mo. Di ba? In a matter of 1 day, alam mo kung sinong presidente mo. So, lalo na po kung barangay. So, we are pilot testing automated BSK in Dasmariñas, Cavite, 2 barangays po yun, and in District 6 of Quezon City.
I see.
So that, hopefully, yung next barangay and SK elections ay ma-automate na natin, although, unfortunately, because of the decision of the Supreme Court. Take note, Sir Klink, there was this decision of the Supreme Court saying that the postponement of the barangay and SK elections na dapat ay December 5 of 2022 was declared unconstitutional. And yes, sir. And because of that, the Supreme Court said, okay, unconstitutional, but we will have to proceed with the October 30 barangay and SK elections because of the so-called operative fact doctrine. Nakapag-prepare ng Comelec naayos ng lahat. So tuloy na tayo sa October 2023. But unfortunately, Sir Klink, sabi ng Supreme Court, the next election will be by 2025. not 2026.
So I do remember you were making a statement about that. Parang
Yes,
you will effectively shorten
Yes, sir.
the tenure of the new elected barangayan sa Kuning Kabataan
Yeah, so
winners.
that's
Tama
why,
po ba?
tama po, Sir Clean. That's the reason why the other day I wrote a letter addressed to the Solicitor General,
Okay.
respectfully asking him or his office to file the motion for reconsideration for and on behalf of the Commission election only on 3 grounds. First, why, with all due respect to our Supreme Court, why are we shortening the term
Correct.
of barangay officials? Oh, naging issue na nga yung nilelengte natin, ipinapahaba. Ngayon naman, na-shorten. Number one. Number two, sabi po ng Supreme Court, ang reason kung bakit dineclare na unconstitutional yung barangay NSK na postponement, because dapat daw ang election ay periodic. And, well, periodic election. If that is the case, kung periodic election pong pag-uusapan, hindi po ba dapat kung ang election na natin na sinustain nila na valid ay October of 2023, 3 years thereafter, hindi po ba dapat 2026 yung election? Yun po yung pangatlo naming reason that practically we'll be preparing for 2 elections in 2025.
The national and the barangay.
The midterms and the barangay, maaari po yung isa is automated, tapos yung isa gusto namin i-automate, but we will not have sufficient resources.
One will be in May, one will be in November.
5 months lang po ang difference.
Mangyayari. Wow.
Yes, sir. And so, we are filing the motion for reconsideration. It may be an exercise in futility, but just the same, we would like lang to emphasize to our Honorable Supreme Court, baka naman mapag-aralan yung dalawang bagay na yan. We will not take care anymore, or we will not question anymore yung whether the Congress had exercised rightly the power to legislate or postpone. Hindi naman po sa amin yun para po sa Congress yun. But as far as the Comelec is concerned, well, Sir Klink, I can honestly tell you, kaya namin po ang 2 elections, but it will be very, very difficult.
Sure, sure. With limited resources or the resources that Congress is unwilling to give.
Yes, because the budget that we submitted to the executive, which was forwarded to Congress, and which is now being heard, pertains only to the preparatory national and local election of 2025. It does not contain any budget for any barangay and SK elections for the 2025 supposedly election, because when we submitted the budget to Congress and to the Office of the President, there was no decision yet of the Supreme Court.
So when you get that legal opinion, does that require a new case in the Supreme Court, or are you looking to legislate siguro the new schedule of the barangay and SK elections? So what is the roadmap here now?
Sir, the motion for reconsideration will be filed in the same case, and we're hoping that the Honorable Supreme Court will be able to clarify. But if not, in the decision of the Supreme Court, that there is nothing that prevents the Congress from legislating for a postponement of the barangay. It's so very clear. But the Supreme Court merely said that if Congress will postpone an election, the Congress should follow the following guidelines.
Also, that's something new. It's not what I understood. So so the Supreme Court said it was legal, except they need to follow certain rules.
Yes, because according to the Supreme Court, the reason as cited by the Supreme Court is a reason which is not acceptable by the Congress.
So I remember they said it can't be any for flimsy reasons.
Yes, sir. And of course, you will have to abide by certain standards and guidelines.
Right.
Maybe so. If Congress will be able to abide by what the Supreme Court is requiring, then postponement of an election can still be possible.
Right. So circling back lang to this innovation of the piloted automated elections for the barangay. So how did Comelec go about that? I mean, because the problem with the machines before was that it's outlived its legal lifespan. No? So how did you guys go about it this time for the pilot?
Certainly, we already declared the 98,000 machines or 97,000 machines as unusable. But fortunately, we still have 1,000 machines.
So that's what you use now.
That will be operational. That is still presently are operational. And so that will be used for the barangay and SK pilot automated election. But of course, we'd like also to announce that by 2025, we'll no longer be using the entire 98,000 machines. These have been used for the last 3 elections. To us and to our understanding, based even on technical issue, it will not perform that much, or we can no longer expect that kind of efficiency. So the Comelec will now venture into procuring new machines, hopefully leasing and not buying or purchasing machines.
I want to go back to that, Linlo, but just to close up that discussion on the pilot. When you say early, you said earlier one of the pilots is to start earlier, 5 to 7. Does that shorten or make the closing time earlier also, or paano po ba yun?
No, sir. Ano po,
So
certainly.
it just starts earlier, but it still ends at the
It will still have to end pa rin by 3 o'clock.
by 3 o'clock pa
Parang
rin.
mas
So it doesn't mean that you
namin.
end at 1, parang kumbaga,
Yes,
talagang
sir.
ganun pa. Inagahan lang
And Sir Clink, we gave additional 2,000 pesos across the board
for the
to all
yeah.
the electoral board members serving in this pilot
I see.
areas of early voting hours.
Wow. Now, since you mentioned, the elections for 2025 and preparations for, I know your attention is focused now on this one coming up. Pero I'm sure that's also, part of the things that's occupying, kasi it's 2025 is not a long time. Where is Comelec at right now? Ano po bang what's the discussion among the commissioners on how to go about it? You mentioned that we're not going to use the same machines. You mentioned that you're favoring leasing rather than purchasing. Are there any other details at this point that that you can share publicly?
Yes, of course, the first stage in a preparation for an automated election come 2025 is to declare that the machines are no longer useful or usable.
Right.
So we already did that.
Right.
The second one is, of course, to propose for a budget. Hopefully, a budget that will allow the Comelec to procure or lease new machines.
This is a budget for 2024.
2024. We call that the preparatory NLE. Always, people will have to understand that there must be a preparatory year for the conduct of an election, especially an automated election. So we propose already. It was reduced substantially. The Comelec was reduced by almost 17.4 billion pesos.
So what is the approved?
As proposed by the president's budget, and already the Congress heard our budget, so we will be given only about 22.9 billion pesos for the new machines system, meaning the software, the hardware, the transmission, or everything about the automated election system. Hopefully we propose more or less about 28 billion, but we will reduce to only 20, yes sir, to 22 only. But anong gagawin po namin? Ganun po yung na-approve. Hopefully, sana nga po maibalik nila kahit man lang sa BICAM kung sakasakali. Pero kung hindi po, we will reduce the number of precincts. That's the first solution. When you say you reduce the number of precincts, we were predicting nga po sana mga 128,000 nga na precincts. Right. But because of that, baka 110,000 na lang, 1,000 voters per precinct. That's the consequence of a reduced number of a reduced budget. So by October, this coming October, we're going to start with the procurement process. Even if the budget had not yet been approved under the law, certainly we can already proceed with early procurement short of award. Right. So we can now proceed so that we will determine, kasi po may nilagay kami mga bagong innovation sa bagong machines natin na wala.
You mean in the technical requirements?
Yes, sir, wala. And for the last 2 months, na nilabas namin yung TOR, nilagay namin sa aming Comelec website, walang nag-question. Walang nagsabi sa amin na naka-tailor fit siya sa kahit na kaninong kumpanya, sapagkat talagang sinugurado po natin na it will not be tailor-fitted to any of the companies. And this is the feature of the machines. Based po yan sa experiences natin, sa kailangan natin. I would like to cite an example, Sir Clint, with your kind permission.
Sure.
The machine will have a 13-inch screen so that the voter will be able to see the ballot image back and forth. Pag pinasok niya, lalabas pa rin yung resibo, makikita niya yung kanyang balota. Tapos po,
so it's not a small screen.
Yes, sir. Tapos ang speed po niya, instead of 70 millimeters per second, 270 millimeters per second. Pagkatapos po, Sir Clint, may automatic correction po siya ng balota, hindi nagkatama yung automatically po kino-correct niya. And ang pinaka-importante po, meron po siyang maglalabas siya ng resibo, meron siyang QR code, pwede po yung baril-baril yung QR code para at the end of the voting, sum total lahat yun. Yeah. At the machine will be transmitting not only to the city or municipal board of canvasser, but transmit to all. Transmit to PPCRB, citizens, the NAMFREL, the kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas, the majority party, minority party, the Congress, city or municipal board of canvassers, and the Comelec. Meaning, for the first time gagawin po namin. Wala na tayong transparency server.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. There were some comments in social media about the removal. So you're removing that not because you're removing transparency, but you're removing that because you're going directly to all of these organizations.
Yes, sir. So that they can compare among themselves if the data as transmitted are practically
so in essence, that's the transparency.
Yes. And may isa pa po, ang pinaka-best na transparency. That's why we called it talaga yung amin na kinakailangan po kasi yung machine pwedeng feature ng manual, pwedeng automated. Yung sinasabi nilang hybrid. Pwede naman pala, ano po yung panghuli na feature niyan? Pagkatapos makapag-suma total ng balota ng machine, and then nakapag-transmit ng result, nakapag-print ng election returns, the machines will be showing all the ballot images to the public.
So could you go back to that again? How many will now receive? You said
KBP, the
PPCRV.
We made it a point na dapat dalawang citizens arm, hindi lang po isa. Dati po isa lang binibigyan ng ER eh. Ngayon, citizens arm, dalawa na yung PPCRV at saka KBP, at saka po NAMFREL. And then the majority party.
Okay.
Whoever will become the majority party, the minority party.
Okay.
And of course, Congress, and then the City or Municipal Board of Canvassers and the Commission election.
I see.
Dati po kasi doon tayo sa transparency server kumukuha ng results.
Everyone gets from that.
Yes, sir. All the media entities, doon tayo kukuha. Ngayon, wala na po yun.
I see.
Kung gustong kumuha ng ibang media, then we can ask the NAMFREL or PPCRV or the KBP to get the copies of the election returns.
So people who were maybe criticizing you because there may be something nefarious there, the safeguard is, as you said, parang they can compare now.
Yes, sir.
Dapat magtugma. Kasi pag hindi nagtugma, then that's where the cheating may be.
Yes, sir. Nag-send ako ng I love you dun sa lahat eh. Tapos may isang naka-receive, I hate you. Parang medyo nakakapagtaka na yun. And then, yung pong ballot images na nahulog ng mga botante natin, at the end of the day, papakita po lahat namin. Hindi naman po ma-identify kung sino yung voter nag-cast ng ballot na yon. So, papakita po namin. And we will allow even the watchers, even the candidates, picturean nila yung ballot images. And then, at the end ng pakita namin, isang total nila yung lahat ng ballot images, yung boto ni Mayor, boto ni ganito, alamin nila kung parehas yun sa na-print at na-transmit ng results.
Yeah. So, those people who may still be skeptical, would it be correct to say that, parang instead of just hacking one transparency server, they would have to hack all of these, all of these things. So parang in a sense, it's harder now to do the wholesale kasi all of those recipients will have to match, di ba? The results. Tama po ba? Is that the correct way
that's right,
of understanding it?
Yes, so that's why we called it fast track, fully automated system with transparency, audit, and count. So you can manually count, you can audit, and we will not do away with Link with the so-called random manual audit. Because the random manual, we are going to count the ballot, yes, sir, physically and manually, and that's still part of the process because that's provided for by law. In fact, Sir Kling, the Comelec is likewise pushing as another project for the 2025 election for internet voting for our overseas Filipinos. It's high time that we use the internet so long as we can guarantee security and the transparency and auditability of the entire process and system.
Does that require a law?
Based on our study, there is no need for a law. The law by itself,
Comelec can, as a constitutional body,
yes, sir, Republic
come up with the rules.
Yes, sir. Republic Act 50 provides that the Comelec can come up with other mode of voting, and then we just recommend or we just report to Congress what other mode of voting there is. And so we will proceed with internet voting because, Sir Kling, try to imagine po noong 2022, we only have 1.697 million overseas Filipinos registered. 1.697. Hindi lang naman po ganun siguro kadami ang mga botante at ang mga Pilipino abroad, mga 10 to 12 million. Bakit 1.697 lang? Tapos po, ang nakaboto lang, Sir Kling, is 40.59. Highest in the history, not even 50%, 40.59. And we spent almost 418 million pesos.
Right. So sayang.
Kasi po,
nakakahinayang.
And then, kasi nga po, hindi sila pumupunta sa embassy, sa consulates. Tapos, hindi naman nila pinapadala, binabalik yung mismong envelope na naglalaman ng mga balota kapag by mail-in voting. So, ang ginagawa pa rin nila, iniiwan na lang or whatever. So, nakakalungkot po dahil ang laki po ng per capita kung titingnan natin as against doon sa bumoto. And not unlike kung internet voting yan, especially sa mga seafarers natin. O kahit nasa laot sila, Sir Kling, pwede silang gumamit ng kanilang cellphones, laptops, iPads, and they can vote.
I see. Interesting. So when you, going back to the terms of reference, have there been any expressions of interest from different parties? How much interest has that generated so far?
Yes, sir.
Um,
When we came up with the TOR, and the TOR was released via the Comelec website, we conducted the so-called market survey. It's
Okay.
part of the a requirement of procurement.
Right.
And for interested prospective uh, suppliers came to the commission and submitted their price as well, their quotation, and they are saying they can customize the machine based on the terms of reference. So hopefully, the number of prospective bidders will increase, not only 4, pero baka po dumami. Minsan po ganun eh.
Yeah,
Pag
yeah.
nagpa-market survey ka, nagtitingin, nagbabantayan
Yeah,
muna,
yeah.
and then bigla ka na lang masusurprise na napakadami pala
Right.
interested.
Right. Now, and you said it's not designed to favor any particular supplier, but like for example, even Kit Tata today was saying that
Yes,
maybe we should disqualify Smartmatic, but I assume that that's not your intention as well with the TOR. It's not meant to favor anyone,
Yes, sir.
but it would it necessarily disqualify anyone?
Yes, sir. You are correct. It's not intended to favor anyone and not intended to disfavor anyone also.
Okay.
We would like to ensure a level playing field for everyone,
Okay.
a fair competition. Everybody should participate. Alam niyo po, mas maganda yung mas maraming technology, mas maraming pagpipilian ng
Right.
commission. Ang problem natin, there are certain rules and regulation na nagre-restrict kasi ng competition, such as, for example, sir, nakalagay kasi sa implementing rules and regulation ng Government Procurement Policy Board. Sabi nila, dapat sa mga gantong klaseng transaction, yung mananalo, yung may tinatawag na single largest completed contract, 50%. Eh, sino yung may 50%? Eh, kung may 20 billion project ka, dapat 10 billion.
Yeah.
So, I wrote a letter to GPPB. Sabi ko, as much as possible, the present leadership would like a level playing field.
Para to open it up. Yeah.
So, nag-request po ako kung pwedeng babaan
Lower,
from 50 naman. Pumayag po sila. And sabi nila, how much pa yung gusto nyo? So, nag-propose kami, 30%. And then sa 30%, regardless whether it is supply, manufacturing, delivery, it doesn't matter so long as they have experience already with the automated system of election or voting. So, kung mapapayagan po nila, mas madadami po yung magpa-participate.
Right.
So, and sabi nga, yung pong disqualification, well taken po yung lahat ng yan. In fact, there was a petition filed before the commission election to disqualify the supplier that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Kaya lang, unfortunately, as a lawyer, kahit naman po sinong lawyer ngayon na there's nothing, you cannot disqualify based on speculation.
Right.
You cannot disqualify based only on speculation. That, of course, we are fully aware that a case was filed against the former chairman of the commission election, involving the alleged rigging of the procurement. And that's the reason why we are so monitoring the situation. We wanted to find out what are the evidences available in the hands of the U.S. Homeland Security, because this evidence will be very important to us, especially in our procurement, and for us to be of assistance when we make the proper decision at the right time.
I see. So let's talk about timetables. I mean, because there is that timeline of the case against the former Comelec Chair Bautista, and then of course your preparations for 2025. What are the major milestones ahead? So you came out with the TOR,
and hopefully by October we'll be able to first of October we'll start with the procurement process, and the process will last for about 1 to 2 months.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the Comelec and Bank will have a choice already by December, and then by January we can award already the contract, and then when you award, of course, there will now be a customization of everything, and there will be an end-to-end testing. So customization, including end-to-end, will require about 6 to 7 months. There will be international certification. You need that, and of course, the source code review and such other review as mandated by law and by regulation. So all in all, circling, the entire process will have to be completed by 2024 December, so that by January na lang po to February, printing of the ballots and such other matters in relation to the election. And I failed to mention, circling, that it is our proposal. Ginawa po natin ito. Hindi po ito ginawa before. Ang ginawa po natin, pinagsama natin sa kontrata yung software at hardware. And at the same time, and other collaterals, such as ballot printing. Of course, the ballots will have to be printed by the National Printing Office, pero sila magbabayad sa NPO. And then, pati mga papel doon, hindi na yung kami na lang bumibili or whatever. Para isang package na lang, the ballot box, the pen. In fact po, yung pen natin, sabi natin, baka pwede hindi na sineshade. Yung sa bingo, yung parang tinatatak na lang.
Oh, I see, okay.
Kasi pag sineshade,
parang stamp.
Pag less than 50%, hindi nabibilang ng machine. Samantalang kung nakastamp, mas maganda, mas madali. So, bahala na yung magsusupply ng machine. Total, kanya naman yun. Basta ito yung amin, nakapackage yan, except transmission.
Are you looking at one supplier, or is Comelec open to maybe awarding several? I mean, Luzon would be given to one company, Visayas to another company. Is that
very dangerous?
So you just want talaga
it should
lang.
Always be one supplier.
Sa bagay, that way, isa lang binabantayan nyo.
Yes, sir. At saka at the same time po, baka kasi, alam nyo naman, for example, kahit sa cellphone natin, iba yung smart, iba yung globe, hindi naman pwede magtugma yung lahat ng yan. Hindi magbibigayan ng pati ng kanilang mga password or code sa mga yan. And that's also the reason why we decided not to include the transmission. Because po yung transmission before, kasama rin doon sa total package ng machine. Yung transmission is a separate contract altogether because kami dapat ang kausap ng mga telcos. And we wanted to include the DICT as well as the National Telecommunication Commission.
Okay. And what's the concern there? So, when you said that, is it again for security and transparency? Is that the aim there, to talk directly to the telcos for the transmission?
Because the Comelec would like to demand whatever document, we would like to be included in the contract. Like for example,
I see,
like for example, we always have the so-called telco exchange. You need that because, of course, Smart or Globe or the other telcos will not allow their system to be shared with other company. So there should be a telco exchange. Now, the telco exchange, we will allow everybody to procure to participate in the procurement. But the telco exchange, whoever who will win in that exchange, will now be talking to the different telcos. We wanted to have a part in the contract that they will enter into. We wanted to be a nominal party to the contract, signing the contract, amending, changing, modifying whatever is the provision of the contract. And we wanted the National Telecommunication Commission to be a witness to that contract.
I see.
In fact, whatever are the data being sent to the telco exchange coming from the machines, there should be a backup of the Comelec and the backup of the DICT. We wanted also to include the DICT because, of course,
for security
reason, in order to ensure that whatever will happen in the telco exchange, there will always be two backups.
Right. Can I ask you something hypothetical? So, given the timeline you were mentioning earlier, so hopefully, if I understood correctly, by the first half of 2024, there should be a winning bidder already. But assuming that maybe a bid is awarded to a supplier, and that is that controversial supplier, and then the case of former Chair Bautista comes out. The decision comes out after the bid has been given. In a scenario, would you think Comelec would step in, say, just in case that same supplier?
And that's the reason why. That's the reason why, Sir Klink.
I know it's very difficult.
That's the reason why. To me, the present circumstances and the available facts should be factored in. Whenever we are to choose we are to choose the new supplier or the supplier of the machine. So, meaning to say, this my statement should not be construed as disqualifying anybody because I'm telling. That's what I'm telling you, sir. That definitely we're not going to disqualify anybody at this point. But that's very important, and hopefully, before the proper time comes that we are going to award, hopefully it's will become very, very clear to us. We are so aware of certain political, historical, and certain issues surrounding the Comelec automation, and that's why we do not want to commit certain mistakes, perhaps committed in the past, or mistakes that we anticipate will be committed. That's why we want everybody to be involved, and that's why the procurement will be open to the public. will be open to all stakeholders, will be live streamed, and we do not want to hide anything to the public, especially the fact that we are going to spend billions of pesos, people's money.
Sure.
That's why po, ginagaranto ko talaga under the present leadership that certain things that happened before maybe will not happen again.
But not only that, I mean, is Comelec monitoring what's going on in the US, where there were a lot of criticisms against smart matting and Dominion, and then they sued the Fox network ngayon? Is that something that you guys are looking at also and see if there's something that maybe there may be a need to safeguard anything, for the Philippines?
Ang isang nagtataka kami, Sir Clink, hindi naman tayong pwedeng sumagot dyan. Maybe it's the U.S. Homeland Security. What was the one that was charged was the former chairman. But there was no charge as against the company.
Oh, I see.
From the legal point of view, bakit? Di po ba dapat kung talagang magkasama, one is the one who gave, the other one is the one who received.
Right.
Why is it that only the one who received was the one, allegedly who received, was the one charged and not the one who gave?
Yeah.
So parang may something lang po. Yun po yung tinatanong natin. Why was not there a charge sheet against the company that allegedly gave something?
Right.
Yun po, very important po yun.
Yeah.
Was there not a case against really the company, or is the evidence against the company so not strong?
Yeah.
But why charge only the former chairman of the Comelec?
Yeah. Can we go back to the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections? Sir, what should people know? Because I know you've been making statements about early voting. I think you had Comelec issued a press statement a couple of weeks ago about warning. I think bribes through through digital wallets, mga things like that. Are there any other things that you would like to remind people to watch out for with regard to this October 30 election?
Yes, so very, very important is the issue of vote buying. It's not only about vote buying, it's vote selling also. It takes two to tango. There's no vote buyer if there is no vote seller. So it's a warning to everyone, even including our voters, na kapag tumanggap kayo ng pera, in kind or promise, tapos binoto mo yung nagbigay sa'yo, hindi po yun, siya lang ang makakasuhan, pati po kayo.
Yeah.
So it takes two to tango. And when a case is filed against you, ano po ito, election offense, 1 to 6 years imprisonment. Yeah. And pag na-convict ka, perpetual disqualification to hold public office po yan. So ganun po ang sinasabi natin, vote buying is the new cancer of our democracy. And therefore, we have to really get rid of that. Alam niyo po, we cannot have that kind of culture na bata pa lang, parang okay lang na tumatanggap ng pera. Okay lang tumatanggap ng pangako. We cannot have that kind of culture. We should be able to teach our youth, especially, na masama yan, and what you're going to sell is not only yourself, you're selling to the devil, you're selling your future. And you cannot be able to have a right choice if there is always a counterpart money or in kind or promise. Dapat maintindihan po natin yon, and that's the reason why voters' education is very important. But we need also the public. We need them to report attempts, and in fact, we promulgated the guidelines. We will make some presumptions, which presumptions will lead to the fact that these people may be engaged in vote buying. We have not done that before. This time, we will make some presumptions, such as, for example, Sir Clink, for example, a person 2 days before the election will be sending to 20 people 1,000 pesos using the modern mode or way of GCash, of Paymaya. We will presume that person is engaged in vote buying. It's quite as
so your Comelec is able to monitor that? Because
we already talked with the Anti-Money Laundering Council and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, as well as GCash, Paymaya, and such other platforms. And they are willing, and that's the reason why we are announcing, try and attempt. Because we would like to find out whether we can be able to trace them.
I see. Interesting. And then I think you also mentioned something about internships or mga as a form of another form of vote buying or employing people. Could you expound on?
Yes, sir. On election day, and
you were saying that they have to get permission from Comelec regardless of if you had allowed it, in another place. Every single instance they have to go through a process with Comelec.
Yes, sir. If you can still remember, meron po kasi sa mga, and this happens usually on election day. Ang gagawin ng isang kandidato, kukuha 50 watchers per precinct.
Right.
mga botante, Sir Clink yun, ng mismong presinto. Watchers. Sa Tagalog po yan, watcher-watcheran lang yun. Hindi mo naman kailangan ng 50, kailangan mo lang ng dalawa, alternate pa.
So that's vote buying.
That's vote buying. Sino yung 48? Binigyan mo ng 500 pesos, 1,000, kalat-kalat lang doon sa labas, naka-t-shirt. But that's vote buying, pure and simple. So we will be making that kind of presumption. Nakapila sa bahay nila ng kandidato before the a day before the election. Tapos may mga dala ng plastic, yung mga nakapila, pag lumalabas na, we will presume the candidate living in that house as engaged or in that headquarters as engaged in vote buying. Meron isang tao, pakalat-kalat, meron siyang indelible ink. Tapos nahuli siya. We will presume that person as engaged in vote buying. And yung money ban, yung money ban circling. Before, it was attempted in 2013 na nagkaroon ng money ban sa withdrawal. We will not do that. We do not want to disrupt the banking system.
Sure.
That is unfair. But any person, at least 3 days before the election, pakalat-kalat sa doon sa barangay, may 500,000 pesos plus, and take note of my word, plus other evidence na, for example, may dala kang indelible ink, may dala kang sample ballots, we will presume that person as engaged in vote buying. Not because of the bringing of the 500,000 pesos only, but because of the other evidence. So meaning, this is an enhanced, we strengthen our fight against vote buying. And that's why we entered into a MOA, Memorandum of Agreement with the DOJ for the prosecution side. We also entered a MOA with the Public Attorney's Office. We entered a MOA with the Philippine Association of Law Schools as well as the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. So sige po, yung magbabiolate, wala na kayong makukuhang lawyers. Nasa amin na po lahat na magde-defend sa inyo. So siguro po, magdalawang isip na lang sila if they were going to be engaged in vote buying or vote selling.
For those who may witness something like that, does Comelec have a hotline or meron po ba silang pwedeng pagsumbungan if they want to report something like that?
Apo, ano lang po, yung pong aming Comelec website. Nandyan lang po, makikita nyo yung lahat ng telephone numbers doon. And in fact, certainly, we will assume jurisdiction even if it's not under oath or formally filed. Kahit simpleng report lang ang gagawin po namin, like what we are doing now in our campaign against premature campaigning. Is very, very effective. Lahat ng mga na-report sa amin, na-verify namin, mukhang may poster doon, isang piraso. We are issuing show cause order as against doon sa mismong kandidato. Di-deny na lang niya. Di-deny siya. Sabi niya, di daw siya kandidato. Number 1, number 2, di daw siya naglagay. Number 2, nalagay daw kasi yung prior to the filing of the candidate. Ayun pala, di dapat tinanggal mo. So, at least, we are giving due process. But we are now acting based only on these reports so that we can verify. Therefore, we can motu proprio. And that's what we did early this morning. We can motu proprio file petitions to disqualify or election offense cases against candidates. So we encourage our people to please report to Comelec. If in the past it's not acted upon or your complaints were not acted upon, please try this present leadership.
Wow. It seems like you have your hands full. Is there anything else, Chairman, that you want to maybe remind people about or maybe you would like to share with us that something that I haven't asked about?
No, but I just want to ask our people, our voters, not to vote on candidates who violated the laws, who are not following our laws or regulation. Kung ngayon pa nga lang po hindi na sila sumusunod sa batas, di how much more manalo sila. Ang magandang iboboto natin ay yung mga sumusunod sa batas dahil maganda yung intention po nila sa ating mga barangay. Pero kung ngayon pa lang nagva-violate, magnanakaw lang yung mga yan. At the same time, iba-violate lang yung mga karapatan nyo. Hindi nga tumusunod ng batas So that this is a fair warning, I think, to one and all. If we wanted, and also, we would like to emphasize, Sir Clink, napaka-importante po ng barangay. It may be the smallest unit of our government, but lahat ng problems natin, away yung pamilya, away mag-asawa, away sa kapitbahay, may nalakawan ng pandemya, ang ating pong frontliners, barangay. And therefore, kung maayos ang barangay natin, magiging maayos din po yung buhay natin.
Well, Chairman, I wish you luck, and I think we'll talk to you again very soon as the election day gets near for more updates and other reminders. And good luck po, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Sige.
At maraming salamat sa Manila Times at sa lahat ng readers and ng mga nanonood po sa inyong programa.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Salamat po.